Hi everyone, I am Barbara Mazzolai from the Italian Institute of Technology. I work in the field of Bioinspired Soft Robotics and I'm going to present some of the activities we are performing in this field and in particular how RoboCom++ contributed to consolidate the Bioinspired approach to design the robot companion of the future. Adaptation is exactly what we try to imitate from a living organism to design robots that are more able to operate in a very unstructured environment. In fact, living organisms are designed to cope with dynamically changing conditions. They can adapt to extreme environments and so investigating the properties, the features, the abilities of living organisms, we can design the robot of tomorrow that can operate in completely new scenarios in very extreme environments. So our approach is in fact starting from the biological model. We use different approaches, different techniques to extract the numbers that then we use for the specification or for selecting materials, the design, the manufacturing process. So in particular, what we investigate is the morphometrics, the biomechanical investigation, behavioral analysis. But what is also important from our perspective is that these robotics platforms, since they are deeply based on biological principles, they can also be used to validate some hypotheses on the biological model from which we start. And so the goal at the end is to improve both basic science and applied research. We select actually many biological models. In particular, we focus our attention on invertebrates, soft animals like cephalopods or earthworms, but also plants, from which we extract, as I say, the numbers for specification to develop robots with completely new abilities, the ability to morph, to grow, to anchor, to climb, and so on, for several applications in different domains, like the industrial domain for manipulation and grasping, archaeology and space, and also environmental monitoring. So I would like to start with the octopus animals that are very well known actually in soft robotics. In fact, in the soft robotics community, we investigate the octopus for several reasons, for several features. We know very well that this animal doesn't have any rigid skeleton, so it can move in any environment, can squeeze the body, but also can apply strong force to the environment by co-contracting the muscle. And also what is very important from a robotics point of view is the fact that the animal has a distributed intelligence. Most of the neurons are in the arms, in fact. But I would like to present some of the results that we obtained by investigating the suckers of these animals. In fact, the octopus animal uses the suckers as a sort of fingers to grasp object, to manipulate object, and also to explore the environment, because suckers embed chemoreceptor, tactile receptors. So this animal uses the sucker to investigate the environment, to reconstruct the environment. And so our approach, as I said, is to start from the anatomical analysis. So we use different techniques like histology, MRI, ultrasound in vivo, micro-CT analysis. And from this investigation, we discover, in fact, some anatomical parts never described in literature, like the presence of protuberance in the acetabular part that we suppose having an important role in the attachment and detachment process. Also, we discover in the protuberance, in fact, and also in the infundibulant part, that is the portion that is in contact with the substrate, hierarchical hairs. We are continuing to investigate the role of these hairs in the probably in the adhesion process, but also they should work as a sensor, in fact, so chemo or tactile sensor. But we use all this information, biological information, to reconstruct in 3D the sucker. And we use this 3D reconstruction to produce a CAD model and then a molding structure to develop our artificial system with the same morphology. Also, we investigate the mechanical properties of the natural material, and we select artificial materials with similar mechanical properties. At the end, we obtain our sucker, artificial sucker, that works very well in wet condition. What is also relevant from an artificial point of view is that this natural sucker, and so also the artificial one, work very well in unstructured surfaces. So we can really open new scenario in industrial domain for climbing robot, also in domestic context. Very interesting also, we discovered that by simply adding growth in the infundibulant portion, we improve more than 30% the adhesion capabilities of the sucker. So the morphology and the material, as I said, are fundamental in this process. In addition, of course, the active part implemented by muscle contraction. And so it's a great example of morphological computation. What we can do with this system, of course, there are many examples that we can do. Just to mention one of the recent projects that we performed with a company to retrieve objects in wells in a very harsh environment, because we have a high pressure, dirty environment with oil. And we demonstrated that with an octopus-like arm, so able to bend and twist, and though with suckers, active suckers, we can retrieve any objects from these wells with different shapes, different materials. The arm can move in a very constrained environment because the maximum diameter is just 7 centimeters. So, as I said, we can open completely new scenario and change the paradigm, because in this case is the robot that adapts its shape to the different object. But as I said, not only animals, we have since 10 years another model in our lab that we investigated to develop completely new technologies that are plants. So we are developing what we call plantoids. In particular, we started some years ago in investigating the plant roots to develop autonomous robots for soil exploration. Again, the approach is deeply based on biology. So we select the roots because they are the most adapted living organism to move in soil, where pressure and friction are very high in few centimeters. And the root can overcome pressure because they grow at the tip level, so at the apical region. And in the tip, they have sensing properties, so they can perceive gravity, humidity, chemicals, they can avoid obstacles and so on. And they move by growing, so with what is called indeterminate growth, because they grow for the entire life. And also they can create a network. And so this is also fundamental because they explore in a capillary way the soil and also communicate internally, but also with other plants, with other organisms. So what we are trying to do is extract, again, features from the natural system with a morphometric investigation, biomechanical measurement, but also behavioral strategies. So to extract a number, design robots that are able to move by growing. So we introduce, by taking inspiration by roots, we introduce a completely new paradigm in robotics, which is based on growth as a strategy of movement. As I said, in the plant root, they move by adding new cells by mitosis at the tip level. Then they absorb water from the environment, and the only part that is moving in soil is the tip. So in this way, they reduce the friction and pressure. This is the way in which we translate this growing principle in a robot. So we integrate a miniaturized 3D printed machine in the tip of the robot. So there is a motor that pulls a filament, a thermoplastic material filament, and gears that allow the perfect deposition, the new filament in contact with the tip. In the tip, we add a thermoresistor, so we can increase the temperature up to 200 degrees for a few seconds. The material in this way becomes sticky, and the new layer can adhere to the previous one, and so the robot, layer by layer, is able to create its own body. The direction of growing is given by the sensor integrated in the tip, and the tropism, so the behavior associated to these sensing properties. So the robot is able to grow following or escaping from environmental stimuli like the natural system. So this is the robot. This is the passive version of the movement, because the natural root, when encountering in fact an obstacle, the first step is completely passive. So there is a sort of backling given by the pressure generated by objects, rocks, and so on. And then there is an active part in which is moderated by chemical reaction. So we also exploit the melting properties of the material in order to have this passive morphological adaptation of the robot. And this way we can reduce the complexity of the control, at least in an initial phase of the robot interaction with the unstructured environment. But what is also important, as I said in the beginning, is also close the loop back to biology. And this is what we demonstrated with our robot. So by a comparison between two identical systems, in which in one case is pushed from the top and the other case is able to grow at the tip level, in the second case we demonstrate that we obtain a faster penetration, more than 40%, and a lower power consumption, less than 70%. So even if the system doesn't have the same dimension or shape of the natural system, in this way we demonstrate why also the natural roots are able to grow at the tip level. So they are much more efficient in soil exploration. And we can implement the same features in the robot tomorrow for soil exploration in a more sustainable way. But not only roots, recently we start to investigate also the aerial part of the plant. In particular, we are investigating the climbing plants as a model to develop a growing robots in air. Why they are so relevant? Because these plants don't have a very sophisticated root apparatus or trunk to sustain the weight. And so in order to avoid to collapse under the weight, they use different strategies to anchor the body. So they use spines or tendrils or adhesive pads. And so we are investigating all these features and their behavior to develop new robots. Just to show you some example, and in particular, again, our methodology. So we start and we identify several climbing plants. This is one of the climbing plants that we are investigating, the Galium aparine. Is an herbaceous plant, but it's a parasitic plant because this plant uses hooks present on its leaves to attach to the leaves of other plants to be much better exposed to light. So what we did is take inspiration from the hooks on the adaxial and abaxial region of the natural leaves to develop artificial hooks and implement in adhesive system for different applications. So we start from, again, a morphological analysis. So we use different techniques to study the shape and also to investigate the material properties of this system. And we develop an array of micro hooks with a similar configuration, the natural micro hooks. And then we develop an adhesive tap. To test the performance of these artificial hooks, we attach the microarray with these micro hooks to the wheels of very mini car. And then we test the climbing properties of the mini car on different materials on a plan with a 45 degree of inclination. And what we observe is just the cars with endowed with these inspired micro hooks are able to climb on these plants and attaching on different materials like artificial skin tissue, polyester tissue, loop part of the Velcro system, and so on. What we can do is investigating this artificial system for climbing robots, as I demonstrated, but also for medical application. This is another application that we are investigating. To conclude, what is the future of these robots? So what we see for the future? What we see by also taking inspiration by natural organisms is robots that will be more and more fully integrated in our ecosystem. This means that we will use, for example, robots for agriculture and environmental monitoring, not only for increasing the production in agriculture, but also and especially to better know the properties of the ecosystem, to detect the presence of water or chemicals, also pollutants, and so to implement a more sustainable agriculture and improve the quality of life, in fact, preserving ecosystem and also human health. But also we can use these robots inspired by different organisms for rescue or for space exploration. In the case of, for example, the plant root, we can use this robot for exploration different planets, not only on our planet, and also to anchor the system, because the roots are fundamental to anchor the plant and let the plant start to grow. But what is also fundamental is to change the approach in developing the robot of tomorrow. So we have to consider a sort of cycle of life in which the robot, as I said, will be fully integrated in our ecosystem. They can perform different action in the environment, helping humans, and then at a certain point they disappear. So this is the vision that we have, and for attaining all these results, I would like to thank again RoboCom Project that helped us in working on these topics, and also I would like to thank my colleagues that work with me on this topic, and all of you for your kind attention. Thank you very much.